ओम सदाशिवसमारंभां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्. We have come to the last verse, the 10th verse of the Dakshinamurti Stotram, and along with that, of course, there is a Manasa Ullasa commentary. About 20-25 verses are there, roughly. So after this, 25 verses, yes. So after this, we have to take a call on whether to keep the class going. Where do you see yourself in your study of Vedanta? What needs to be done further for your clarity of understanding and Nishtha, for the whole class as a whole. So I'd really like you all either to call me up or put your suggestion on the group. Okay? Don't fill the group with all sorts of forwards. Please don't do that. But this, some suggestion if you want, if you think whether to keep the at least whether to keep the class going or not. Okay? And what you need to know. What do you need to gain further clarity and Nishtha? Please send me that message on the group. Okay, you can call me up also, no problems. If you want a small discussion about it, no issues on that. I mean, I don't have to tell my students, you can always call me. Okay. Because then over the next, it takes about maybe 4-5 classes before we complete this. No? By that time we need to take a call. Okay. So let us start. The verse starts very beautifully. We just chanted it, so I am not going to chant it again. Sarvatmatvam iti sputikritamidam. Amushmin stave. Sarvatmatvam sputikritam. This sarva, idam sarvatmakam. Aham sarvamiti. Atma sarvamiti. This is the hallmark of this stotra. That I, the consciousness, is everything. Because, as I always say, Vedanta is not about saying your consciousness. No. That is only Sakshi Bhava. That some experiential understanding, etc., can be there. A high degree of Viveka can get you there. Some modern books, if you read, you will be there. But Vedanta is about that this consciousness is everything. Sarvatma. Sarvatma bhavam as we talk. Therefore, sarvatmakam vitam sputikritam idam. Idam stotram. Sarvatma bhavam sputikritam has been made it very clear, he says. Therefore, what happens? Tena asya shravanat, by listening to it. Shravanam. Tad artha mananad, by analyzing the meaning. Keep on reflecting upon the meaning, challenging the meaning, challenging your understanding. Okay. It can be done on your own. It can be done in a group. Tat chintanam, tat kathanam, anyonyat tat prabodhanam. We saw in the Gita. To think about it, to talk about it to each other, help each other's understanding of it. That is called mananam. Then dhyanacha, and dhyanam. To contemplate on it. I have taught enough contemplation in this group. So to contemplate on the truth of what you are. Okay? What is contemplation? Another word for it, nididhyasnam, is jnana abhyasa, repetition of the knowledge. The knowledge that you have gained without the elaborateness of the logic and the stories and the jokes and everything. Sum up the essence of it and get it into your mind at the seat of meditation. Dhyanacha. And he adds one more. Sankirtanat. Sing it, chant the stotras. One way of looking at it. Another way is to teach it. Sankirtanam means to teach it. Sankirtanat. Or as an upasana, chant it. Both are included. For people like us, Sankirtanam will become teaching. For those who are still working on their understanding, Sankirtanam will become literal chanting. Chanting the sutra. Why? Because the idea will keep playing in your mind. You already heard it. If you heard it, you have some understanding. Unless you are the type of person who says, I don't want anything to do with Sanskrit. Barring that, when you will say a word, it will keep playing on your mind. So, Sankirtana. Okay. What happens then? Okay. What happens? Sarvatmatvam maha vibhuti sahitam syad ishwaratvam tataha. Because of that, Sarvatma bhava, naturally, because that is the purpose of this stotram is what? Sarvatma bhavam. Therefore, the Sarvatma bhavam will naturally be yours, he says. Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. And as Upasana, Sankirtana. Yeah. So, to most of you, I have given the japa of that mantra also, Dakshinamurti mantra. That also I have given you all. So, you have that as Upasana. Sarvatmatma bhuviti. And he says, now he is adding a bit of an arthavada here. Okay. Maha vibhuti sahitam, with all the glories of Ishvara, syad ishwaratvam tataha. Ishwaratvam will be there with you, says. Not literally. This is a little bit of an arthavada to motivate people to study more. Okay, to highlight the importance of getting the Sarvatma bhava. Okay, syad ishwaratvam tataha. Siddhyetat punarashtadha parinitam chaishwaryam avyahrutam. And you will get all sorts of Aishwaryam, he says. And all the Ashtasiddhis will be there with you. Not that you are going to get all the Ashtasiddhis literally, unless you do those practices, okay? One Siddhi is very important right here. If you are going to be talking to people at home, please mute your mic. Thank you. Therefore, with all the siddhis, you will gain, he says, not to be taken literally, just because you teach this there. Moksha and siddhis are two different things. Okay? The Ashta Siddhis we'll see here. He mentions Ashta Siddhis here. Okay? Okay, so Aishwaryam Avyahrutam. All sorts of Aishwarya you will get. Yes, if you do the Upasana, Aishwarya you will definitely gain. But moksha and siddhis are two separate things. Every person who gets all the siddhis need not have moksha with them. Atma Jnana may not be there. And the person who has moksha, Atma Jnanam is there very clearly, need not have any of the siddhis. Siddhis come from certain practices involving the body, involving your pranayamas, your mastery of your energy systems, mind being centered. All these together will give you the siddhis. Out of this, that mind mastery part is important for a student of Vedanta also. Mastery of the mind. But by then, all these three by itself is not going to give you moksha. Moksha comes by Atma Jnanam. Moksha is Atma Swarupa. One has to recognize that. For that, you need a pramana, a means of knowledge. The means of knowledge is called Vedanta, Shabda Pramana. Therefore, when you do that, when you study Vedanta, and the meaning is very clear to you, then you recognize you are never bound. That's moksha. Not the bound becoming free, the one who thought himself bound, recognizing that I am never in bondage. This is what moksha is about. So, because of the mastery of the mind, etc., sometimes without your effort, some little bit of siddhi in terms of some intuition, etc., may come to you. That's okay. Nobody bothers about it. No student of moksha really bothers to get the siddhi. Okay? Siddhi like walking on water. Yeah, it may be useful if the monsoon floods Bombay up, okay? But otherwise, what? Or if you are working for Baywatch, then it will be useful, not otherwise. Okay? Yeah. Therefore, all this, Ashtasiddhi, etc., a student of Vedanta doesn't bother about it. Not interested. Because it takes for a lot of time and effort to gain these siddhis that the Yoga Shastra and Shivagama, Tantric practices, etc., that talk about. You have huge amount of time and practice for it. 10, 12 years of practice, and how much practice? Not 1 hour morning, 1 hour evening. 8 to 10 hours every day. That means you are doing only that for 10, 12 years. Interested? You can't. Not worth it. So why not directly go for the greatest siddhi ever? All siddhis pale into insignificance in the fact that I am that limitless awareness, unbound by time and space. I am the basis of the whole creation. In front of that, what is the siddhi of walking over water or something? Nothing. It's too small. It is too small to be compared. Because the one who walks on water still feels limited. The one who can have all these siddhis of huge power, this, that, etc., will still feel a finite guy. That sense of finitude is not going to go. To have a certain objectivity towards your own body and mind becomes so difficult for people. And if you are an intellectual, you have certain ideas. To be objective towards your own ideas and recognize that they are only very limited is very difficult. That's why people sit in a Vedanta class and sometimes get upset when the teacher dismisses some ideas. Yeah. Or if you have a great talent like singing or something like that, you're so caught up in it, it is difficult to have a sense of objectivity towards that and say, my singing is limited, it's not going to give me moksha. Because all classical songs will talk about moksha. Yanamu sopanamu. Your ganam, singing, is a staircase towards moksha. God is always involved in the classical singing. Therefore, for a trained classical singer or a dance, like the other day, I was speaking to someone, very young girl, barely 30, 32, great dancer, very good. And dancing gives her that high. She has reached a level where she can say there is neither the dancer nor the dance, there is only the dance. Great. So for her to recognize now that experience is not moksha, that's only an experience. It takes some time. She knows me. She knows other teachers as well. She knew my guru as well. She was a little kid in front of my guru. But it will take time for her to be objective towards that and say this is not enough. This is only something experiential for that moment when I am dancing. It is not, my freedom from finitude as a norm is not there. Now, if for all these worldly accomplishments, this is there, what if you get the siddhis? Walking over water, by thought increasing and dropping my weight. I'm sure many people will want that. So when they step on the scale, they're 10 kilos lighter. Okay. To be able to intuitively read people's minds. Believe me, you'll be an ambassador if you can do that. If you really knew what everyone around you thought about you, probably you'll be left with only one or two friends. But how much more difficult it will be to be objective towards these. It will be very difficult. How do you become objective? When a talent like dance or music can make me feel limited, make me difficult to accept my limitations, that the result of that is limited, or power or wealth. Then what about if you get these extraordinary siddhis? Siddhi means an accomplishment, okay? Is the extraordinary siddhis if you get, how much more difficult it will be for you to have vairagya with respect to that and have a sense of objectivity. Therefore, generally, in the teaching of Vedanta, we dismiss all this. Anyway, it is in the Mithya world, it is not Satyam. Not to say it is not there, but it's all within the Mithya world. So, Vedanta teachers normally will dismiss all this. Why waste time and effort on this? If half that time and effort, or even 10% of the time and effort you put into the study of the Pramana, instead of 8 to 10 hours a day, you study 1 hour a day, 3 times a week, you will gain moksha. Spend that time a little bit in terms of taking care of your mind. Viveka, Vairagya, Shat Sampatti, Mumukshutvam, etc. If you do, moksha is there for asking. Therefore, very often it is dismissed, and rightly so. Why do you want to waste time on all these things? Okay. But here he says, he gives it like a little bit like a carrot, so that even those who are not very keen will start, and in the process they will understand what it's all about. Okay. Clear up to now? Okay. So now looking into the Manasollasa, he says, Parichinnam aham bhavam parityajya anushangikam purna ham bhavalobhasya srotasya phalamuchyate labhasya sotrasya phalamuchyate. Parichinna aham bhavam. My sense of finitude. I am a limited entity. I am a human being. I am this much only. Parityajyanushangikam. By giving it up. Anushangikam. Along with the cause. Because you can never give up your sense of finitude unless the cause, the ignorance, is given up. Why do I take myself as a finite being? Because I don't know I am limitless awareness. Since I don't know I am that limitless consciousness, and that I, limitless consciousness, happen to be manifest in this mind, and that mind is associated with this body, I take what I am associated with as myself. Very peculiar logic it is. In fact, it is not logic. It is called avichara siddham. I experience the body, therefore I am the body. I experience the mind, therefore I am the mind. How can that be? If you are experiencing something, there should be a subject-object relationship. Otherwise, how can you experience anything? Anything that you experience has a subject-object relationship. I experienced a nice cup of coffee today morning. Subject-object. There is always a subject-object relationship in an experience. Swamiji, what will happen when you are lost in an experience? Yeah, when you are lost in an experience, like I gave the example of music and dance, etc., some sort of temporary laya takes place. We call this laya. Like in sleep, what happens? Subject-object disappears, laya, because ahankara is deep asleep. So some sort of laya can take place. When you are singing, I have a student who, when she sings, she is lost in it. Or this dancer I talked about, the only dance. There is only the singing, there is only the dance. There is no dancer and dance. There is no singer and song. It is I am the singer, I am the song. That's how it is. Yeah? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So it's a high degree of centeredness. Some sort of samadhi experience it is. But that's temporary. Like in deep sleep, it's temporary. Because if you make it experiential, then you have two sets of experience. Now it's up to you, which do you want to give greater emphasis on. So, the yogi will say, no, this is the real experience. What about when he's feeling hungry? That's not real. That's only the body. Then what are you talking about? You'll have to say, no, really I don't have anything. But what is it? You become vague. Some sort of experiential insight you will gain. I'm not denying that. Some sort of experiential insight, but very vague. It's not knowledge. It's full of doubts, full of errors. If you say, no, I don't have doubts, you are denying certain aspects of your own mind. You cannot be free from doubts based only on an experience, unless you have given up your thinking. If you are a thinker, you necessarily will have to question the validity of that experience and the validity of your worldly experience, which is more common. Or you have to be a person who gives a greater reality to your subjective experiences than the objective world. That is a problem. That is a problem. If you think the subjective world of yours is more important than the objective world that is there, you are in for a big mess. Big mess. Yeah. Because tomorrow somebody else will come and say, oh, I experienced, Shiva came to me in my meditation and he talked to me. And he said, I am right, you are an idiot. Who will take what is true? Somebody else will say, no, Devi came to me. Somebody else will say, Krishna came to me. Somebody else will say, Allah is only reality, everything else is false. That's highly subjective. That's highly subjective. Then you will become intolerant of everything else. Because your subjective reality is the truth for you. That's why in Vedanta we dismiss subjective reality. As valid for you, okay, up to a certain point, not more than that. And we talk about harmonizing over subjective, objective, to have some balance in the whole thing. And if you are trying for that balance, then you will necessarily have to question that subjective experience. That is why he says Anushangikam. Along with the cause it has to go. It is not a resolution in terms of experiential resolution of the Ahankara, like that happens in samadhi, or in deep sleep. Deep sleep also it happens. Along with the cause, ignorance, self-ignorance has to go. Only then the Sarvatma Bhava is valid. Why? There is no more self-ignorance. Self-ignorance is gone. If self-ignorance is gone, then it's a different picture altogether. You are no more subjective then. Because the very cause for subjectivity is your ahankara. One fundamental mistake about yourself, your self-judgment, that I am a finite being. The moment you have that, you cannot but help have subjectivity in your life. That's why we say nobody lives in the world that is. We live in the world that we think it is. A great part of our reality is our subjectivity. Our experiential reality is our subjectivity. That's why Vairagya gains such an important place in the study of Vedanta. How to be objective, how to give up some of my belief systems, etc. It is there where it is more important. Whether you give up something physical here, there, that's relative. Your subjective thing is the main thing important. Your beliefs, your ideas, your this. Yeah. All those type of things. That's where the real blocks are. How you drink your tea is also subjective, but that doesn't matter. Yeah. Whether you like coffee black or with milk, Indian style, it doesn't matter. That type of subjectivity doesn't really matter. But your belief systems, etc., matter a lot. Okay. Therefore, Anushangikam, along with the cause that ignorance has to go. Then what? Purnoham bhava labhasya. Only then I will get Purnoham iti bhavaha. The state of being Purnaha. Tat labha will be there. That is the phalam, the result of this stotra. Therefore, how do you know whether your learning has been successful? Do you have Purnoham iti bhavaha? Do you have the Purnoham iti bhavaha? Aham atma idam sarvam. Have you have that? If you have that, you can say, Naham Sishyaha, Natvam Guruhu. You can say that. I'll be happy. I'll be very happy. Yeah. Why? One problem over. Joking. I don't think my students have problems. Okay. I think they're great. I think they're a great bunch. Yeah. But I'll be happy if someone comes up to the analysis. Yeah. Then I'll start treating you like a guru bhai or a guru bhai, you know. Yeah. Why? Because you got it. Yeah. I mean, I do that with all my juniors. I outrank them by 30 years in terms of my experience of teaching, but still, I will do them. Why? Because they're getting it. There's no senior junior as far as this knowledge is concerned. Okay, you got it, you got it. Yeah. That's it. Therefore, Purnoham iti bhava labhasya stotrasya phalamuchyate. This is the phalam of the stotra. That Purnoham iti. Yeah? Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you can put it like that, though he actually means little bit literally also, as Arthavada. Yeah. That is true. The greatest Siddhi is Purnohamiti Labha. The greatest Aishwaryam is what? Purnohamiti. Because they'll always remain with you. No? This will always remain with you. Other Aishwaryam in terms of wealth, etc., comes and goes. Aishwarya also will come and go. The girl, I mean. Okay. Come and go. This will happen, yeah. That's okay. That's a different thing. Yeah. The greatest wealth is what? Knowledge. Yeah. In any situation, even relatively speaking, knowledge and your skills are your greatest wealth. Why? You lost all your money, you can make it again. Because why? You have your knowledge, you have your skills. So all that you have lost, you can rebuild again. Why? Because you have it within you. What you have within you, in terms of knowledge, skill, etc., is more important than what you have outside. Because outside everything can be lost. Here, I can rebuild it if I choose to. Or I may choose enough. I got freedom from all that stuff. I created all that. I got freedom now. Babaji ban jayega. Moksha now. Been there, done that. That's also fine. But that also is because of what you have inside, not what you have outside. Even relatively, this is true. So when you're looking at it objectively, as Falguni said, it is true. The greatest Aishwaryam, the greatest wealth is Atmajnana. Yeah. But because of the cha there, and, in this sloka there is a couple of ands coming in, and this and that. Therefore we say, he means it little bit literally also, as Arthavada. And that is the stand that the writer of the Manasvalasas, Sureshwar Acharya ji, is also saying the same thing. He is taking that. Look at what he says. Yeah? Yeah? Yeah, please. Both. Because the root cause is ignorance. Okay? I don't know myself. Now, if I don't know myself, I find myself confronting a world. Because as you said, Pratyaksha Adi Pramanas, all the Pancha Pramana. I find I have to relate to it. So to relate to the world, I have to take a stand. It is something like this. Someone new comes to a class. Now to relate to the class, that person has to take a stand. Na? Oh, I am a new student. No, I have studied something before. No, this is an add-on class. I am actually a student there. Some stand you have to take. Or we are all in it together. New class is starting. Some stand you have to take. So similarly in the world, when you are born, there has to be a stand. I don't know who I am, what I am. Therefore, I will necessarily go with what I have identified with, what I am associated with. Remember my story about that actor on the stage playing the role of a beggar, and when he falls, concussion, temporary amnesia, doesn't know who I am. He look at his clothes and say, I must be a beggar. I must be. I'm not happy with that conclusion. But I identify with what I am associated with. This is sahajam, natural, without any thinking. If you thought and you questioned it, then either you will become a philosopher or come to Vedanta. If you form your own theories, you will become a philosopher. If you want to come and really understand, then you will become a student of Vedanta. Two things can happen. Or you will call yourself an atheist and agnostic. I am keeping an open mind. I don't know. You open mind, so all ideas can float through. Yeah. Agnostics are like open mind for everything. For what? I don't know whether this is true. I don't know whether that is true. I don't know. Therefore, what do you commit yourself to? I don't know. You will commit yourself only to your pleasures and your ideas, finally. And you'll be against every other idea also. Even though you say you have an open mind, you really don't have. Because to deal with the world, you have to take a stand. Yeah, to deal with anything, you need to take a stand. And your stand, in a way, functionally defines you. That's called self-judgment. I am this, therefore I am going to do this. I am someone who can't stand injustice, therefore I will do this. I will fight against it. I am someone who loves nature, therefore I will become an environmentalist. So, your stand defines you functionally. Yeah. So, it is both. If the self-ignorance was not there, look at the same thing. Now, this person gained knowledge. I am no more a limited finite entity. Then, what is your stand? I am playing a few roles. Therefore, what the role demands, I will do. And I will do it well. Like right now, I am playing the role of a teacher. Just because it's a role doesn't mean you won't do it well. You will do it well. You will do it well. Otherwise, what will I do? If I am not going to do it well, what will I say? Just a role, na? Forget it. What is important? Someone comes and asks me, Ramji, I am feeling finite, limited, I am sorrowful. Hey, go. You are limitless awareness, you are nothing but Ananda. Go fish. That is called not doing it well. Okay, go fish. You are Ananda, na? क्या करने के ये सब बकवास करके? You are Ananda. Go. That's not playing the role. Okay. So, someone who knows the truth can play the role well. That is not compromised. Any role. The person takes it up, play the role well. But the other guy, but because it's a role, the problems of the role are not his. I don't have an issue with any role. Do you believe in environment? Yeah, of course. I've done a lot of work with environment. Ever since I was in school, a big deal. Big deal. Much more than many of the, social media environmentalists who only write about it, don't do anything about it. A few do. Many only like to write. What about dharma, etc.? Yes, I've done a lot about it, not just talk about it. What about Vedanta Jnana? I talk a lot about it and I validate it also. In fact, I started talking only after I validated it. Why? Because as a pramana is shabda, therefore I have to talk. That's the only reason where talk is more important than doing. Everywhere else, doing is more important than talking. Here, the teaching is more important than the doing part. Yeah. Therefore, this self-ignorance necessarily has to go by the Shabda Pramana. Only then the Purnatam etc. will come, not otherwise. Then continuing the idea of Aishwaryam etc., he takes the next verse. Putra Pauta Graha Kshetraha Dhana Dhana Dhanya Samrudaya Avarchinnascha Siddhyanti Sarga Patala Bhumishu. Says Putra, children, Pautra, grandchildren, Graha, house, Kshetra, lands, etc., Dhanam, wealth, Dhanyam, grains, food, etc., Samrudaya, in plenty. Avarchinascha, even though they are lower ends. Okay. Siddhyanti, where? In the three worlds. Meaning wherever you are. Don't take it literally, because he says Swarga Patala Bhumishu. In Patala all this is not there, okay? And no person who knows the truth is going to go to Patala. Nor is he going to go to Swarga. Okay? But it is an expression. In the three worlds he will gain everything he wants. It's an Arthavada expression. In the three worlds he will gain whatever he wants. So similarly here also, Bhumishu, which is true, not if you are just a knower of the truth. If you have done the Upasana, Sankirtanam, if you have done the Dakshinamurti Upasana, definitely it will come to you. If you only studied for Atma Jnanam, depending on your prarabdha, it may come, it may not come. But you will never suffer. That much will be there. Why? The study itself is a worship. Ityesha Vangmayi Puja. Srimad Shankara Padayo. It's a Vangmayi Puja. Only thing is, it is not to the Rupa, to the form, it is to the Swarupa, the true nature of Ishvara. Therefore, I have not seen anybody really suffering with that. That very rare. But if you have done the Upasana, Dakshinamurti Upasana, as regularly, every day you chant this as a discipline. Every day you do some japa of the Dakshinamurti mantra, japa you do. And the other upasanas that go with it. All the dhyana slokas are meant for upasana. Yeah. You conceive of the Dakshinamurti sitting under a tree. Remember? A banyan tree and all that. Yeah. Vatavita Samipe Bhumi Bhage Nishannam. Under the banyan tree on the earth, he is sitting and teaching all that. All that is meant for upasana. If you do that, what he says here is definite. Okay? Is definite. You will gain all the phala. But Dakshinamurti, the main invocation is his invocation as a teacher. Therefore, the invocation is meant for knowledge. Okay? Meant for knowledge. Where you go to a Vedanta teacher, you are going to tell him, Swamiji, please bless me. Huh? Baitho, come, sit in my class. Why? Hey, that's the greatest blessing you can give anyway. Swamiji, my child has to get married. Tatas. Whatever little energy I have, I will share it with you so that your wishes can come true. It's a good way. It's a noble thing. Unless the child is saying, I don't want to get married. The child has already come to the Mahatma and says, my mama is going to come and say, I want to get married. I don't want to get married. We sadhus are put in all these type of positions by the devotees, what to do. So you bless both. Then let Prarabdha take over and do what? So, this is it. The main invocation of Dakshinamurti is meant for knowledge. This is called Avantara Phalam. Your secondary benefits. Okay? How do these secondary benefits come to somebody who is seriously into knowledge? Look at it. He gives a logic, very interesting logic. He says some of it will come to you unasked, he says. Why? Look at it. Pake pravartamanasya शीतादि परिहारवद प्रासंगिकश्च सिद्ध्यन्ति स्तोत्रेण अनेन सर्वदा. Yeah? 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 Which one? Arvachinah. Yeah. Arvachinasya in plenty. In the lower ones. Arvaham, lower. Yeah. Lower. Yeah. Arvachi, lower. He gives you a logic how you are going to get it. Pake pravartamanasya. Here is a person who is engaged in cooking. Shitadi pariharavat. What is the fringe benefit of cooking? Winter in Rishikesh. The favorite place is the kitchen. Why? If you are cooking or doing some voluntary work, seva in the kitchen, you are protected from the cold as well. No? Your main function of the cook is to cook. But in winter, he gains an added benefit of being free from cold. Where everyone is moving around bundled up, he is cooking with just an angavastram, upavastram on his, he's cooking. Why? The blazing fire in front, and the whole pot is kept on top of that. Avantaram. Fringe benefit. Like how I say, if you are a karma yogi, stress relief is a fringe benefit. You are not living a life of karma yoga for stress relief. That is not the idea. Stress relief is not the idea of karma yoga. Yeah, somebody has sent me a message, Kavita. In the mountains, people wait to get a chance to sleep in the kitchen tent because it's warmer than all other places. True. On a trek, etc., that is true. So, the main practice of karma yoga is for moksha. Stress relief, fringe benefit. Similarly, here he says, okay, prasangikascha siddhyanti. Prasangikena, incidentally. You are worshipping Ishvara. Your aim is moksha. Dakshinamurti is invoked for moksha. But it is Ishvara who is being invoked. Therefore, prasangikena, because you have done some worship, some upasana, some japadhyanam, etc. As prasangikena, srotena, anena sarvada, at all times, by this sutra, you will get the fringe, as fringe benefits, you will get some wealth and things like that. Some prosperity, etc. Okay? If you want it, Putra Pautradi. Putra Pautradi, if it's going to come as a rule, I am not going to chant it. Unless the Putra Pautra is in the form of students, then I am fine. Then I am fine. Yeah. Jnana Putras, I am fine with. Yeah. Yeah. So, if Prasangikena, as incidental, yeah. Because you're doing the upasana anyway, and the upasana has this phalam also. See, the idea is this. Okay? You went to your doctor and said, Doctor, COVID times I'm worried about my immunity, etc. What should I do? He said, take B complex vitamins with C and Z, zinc. So because you Z, you take that. You are taking it, your primary objective was to improve your immunity. But all-round health also goes up. And if you are taking too much of it, everything will go out into the bathroom when you empty your bladder. And the rats in the sewer also will get stronger. All these are secondary results, okay? All these are secondary results. Yeah, people have been abusing vitamins now by taking too much of it, overdosing themselves. But these are all vitamins that are water soluble. Therefore, excess will not be stored in the body. So excess will go out with your emptying the bladder. And who will benefit? The rats in the sewer will benefit. They will become stronger. I'm not joking. This is a medical fact. Ask the doctors in the group. They'll tell you this. As it becomes stronger. Fringe benefit for the rats. But for you, good health, etc. Though you are looking at it for immunity boosting, general good health also will be there. So similarly here, his example is very good. In winter when you are cooking, you don't have to worry about the cold, fringe benefit. Similarly, because you have done the upasana, you did it with the main intention of knowledge, fringe benefit, wealth, etc. comes to you. Why? Because the Lord recognizes that for your work, for your this, etc., some money is necessary. Yeah. So whatever the upasana can give you, will give you. It will also depend upon your karma, okay? It also because I have Sarvatma Bhava doesn't mean I'll become world famous. That depends on your karma, previous life karma, how your position of your guru is. That's very interesting because if your guru is weak, guru meaning, your guru is pretty strong, don't worry. Okay. We are talking about guru, the planet, Brihaspati, okay? In your horoscope, if your guru is weak, there are two deities. You can worship Guru, the planet, directly, but generally, more than worshipping the Guru, the planet, directly, As a regular thing, they'll worship, they'll say, because of Brihaspati, Vishnu is the Adhisthana Devata. Okay? You worship any form of Vishnu. But Guru is also Brihaspati, the teacher of the Devas. Therefore, you can also invoke Guru as Dakshinamurti. Therefore, either as Mahavishnu or as Dakshinamurti, you can invoke Guru. And if you strengthen your Guru, meaning the planet, by these worship, your luck will go up. Your luck will be better. Your fate will be improved. Fringe benefit. Can you see? Whereas there you are doing the upasana directly because your luck is pure and you want to do something to better your lot. Therefore you are doing that because your astrologer told you Guru is weak. Therefore do this worship. There it is direct. Your worship is limited for that. Therefore you won't gain the moksha phalam. But here he says, since you did the upasana for moksha phalam, avantarena, indirectly as fringe benefits, you will gain this also. Interesting. No? Does it motivate my students to at least chant the Dakshinamurti Stotra regularly? It will take you only 5 minutes to chant the whole thing. Okay. It's a good idea. Do it. Because I want, for me, the main idea is moksha. Because when you chant, all the teaching, the ideas will come back to you. The chanting will make the ideas, because all the teaching of, that's why I associate my teaching with the verse. I can sit down under a tree and teach without a single book in my hand. All the way for someone to gain moksha. That is traditional teaching. You can sit under a tree and teach. You don't need a single book. The whole book can be, he's here. Because what you have to do is point out the truth. No? That's how the Upanishads came about. No? A rishi sitting under a tree and teaching. That's it. You can do that. But why do you take a text and do that? So that you have, the text becomes your notes. And if you have added your own notes, even better. Even better. Some people have done that, some people don't. Some people think they are great. I've seen some people sitting without books also. Maybe they are Uttama Adhikaris. Sunne matre se sab ho jata andar. Everything goes inside. Maybe they are. I don't know. Doesn't look like that to me, but whatever. Therefore, when you chant Sankirtanam, that's why he has put in that deliberately. Sureshwaracharya, one of the greatest teachers of Vedanta among Shankara students, among Adi Shankara students, one of the greatest teachers was Sureshwaracharya. The Sureshwara says that he was the Mathadipati of Sringeri, the first Mathadipati of Sringeri. Yeah. So he says that Sankirtanam, because when you chant it, the ideas come. You do meditation for some time, contemplation. How long are you going to sit in meditation? Therefore, before meditation, extend that by chanting sometime. So when you chant, all these ideas are playing in your mind. Then when you are contemplating, you will pick up one idea and contemplate. So it helps, it works very well in terms of your understanding and your nishta. Secondary benefit is some prosperity also comes. And tell me, in today's world, who doesn't want prosperity? Who doesn't want it? I know many of my students had to take a pay cut because of COVID. No? Or businesses have less income, etc. Correct, true. And we all can take it in our stride. Why? Because we are karma yogis, minimum. Minimum we are karma yogis. We'll take it in our stride. Good attitude. But can you say that when the COVID problem is over, you don't want to go back to your previous level of earning or even a little bit more? Can you say that? Then you don't want to? All of us want to. Who doesn't want to? Yeah. If you get lots, then you can do some good with also with it. No? Even if you don't get lots, you can do something good with it. Therefore, avantara phala, prosperity, etc., putra pautradi, dhana dhanyadi, okay, kshetradi, land, etc. All that is added benefit of doing this avantara phalam, he says. He gives you another example. We can quickly look into it. I'll explain a bit more maybe next time. Aishwaryam Ishwaram hi tasya nasti prutak sthitihi purushe dhavamanopi chayatam anudhavati. What an example. I mean, Sureshwara thinks about some great examples. Aishwaryam, wealth, Ishwaratvam, lordliness, etc. Tasya nasti prutak sthitihi. They don't exist separate from Ishvara. Can you say Aishwaryam, wealth, etc., Ishwaratvam, lordship, etc., is apart from the consciousness? No. They are part of the consciousness, part of a manifestation of the consciousness. Okay. Therefore, what? If you say I am a limitless consciousness, some of it has to come to you also. That lordliness will come to you. See, you can joke, मैं फक्कड़ हूँ. I joke that very often. Who are you? मैं फक्कड़ from Rishikesh, staying in a nukkad in Bombay. Correct. One level it is true. But I also say the other thing. No? As I sit here on this place, in this seat, I sit on every planet in the universe. Right? Sarvatma bhava, natural. Therefore, that lordship, etc., some of it is very natural, which sometimes may be mistaken as an ego. It's not an ego, it's just the sense of, hey, fine, I'm that. For ego, you have to necessarily feel small and then overcompensate by trying to become big. Here is not like that, very natural. Like a very interesting thing happened. One of my batchmates came to touch my feet and touch my feet. I said, hey, you're my batchmate, what are you doing touching my feet? Hey, you are a Mahatma. I said, hey, I may be a Mahatma, but I don't have Mahatma Giri. You know? So don't. I treat you as my batchmate, must be equal. So do that. Yeah. Therefore, here he says that overlordship and Aishwarya is naturally associated with the consciousness. How he says, when a man is running, okay, Purushe Dhavamanopi, he is running fast. He is running fast. Does he leave his shadow behind? However fast he runs, can he leave his shadow behind? No, his shadow comes with him. Even if you are running fast, your shadow comes with you. So similarly, he says, some Aishwaryam, some this, etc., will automatically come with you. Of course, it also depends on your past karma and things like that. Not just this little bit karma that you have done, but some amount of it is always. That's why no sadhu starves in India, you know. No sadhu starves in India. Always, Lord sends him something always. No problems. No problems. Sometimes it becomes more. Like yesterday in my class, I gave the example of Rasgulla and some discipline with respect to Rasgulla, and how one of my students, Shaboni, her mother, who is also my student, would send me Rasgullas once in a week, homemade Rasgullas by a Bengali lady. I gave that as an example. And within 1 hour of the class being over, Rasgullas landed at my house by somebody else. Nobody starves. Okay. God sends you through someone or the other. Someone or the other, the Lord sends it. And the lady who sent it, her name is immortal, Amruta. Fitting, no? Very fitting. Very fitting. So, that is what he is trying to say. As a fringe benefit, as a side, you will always gain it, he says. Okay? But your aim is not to gain that. Your aim is for moksha. Keep that in mind. Your aim is in moksha. If others follow or not, as a shadow, if it comes, is not a problem. You can enjoy it. You can do some good for others. All that can happen. Okay, but keep the aim as moksha. Don't lose sight of that. So, good place to stop unless there are some questions, etc. Any questions, or is it clear? Or is it all clear? Shoot. Yeah. Yeah. Good. This thing also. Yeah. No. See, all stotras have some falashruti. The falashruti is for motivating the person to do it. So, a ordinary person, a householder or anyone who is not a student of Vedanta, will do the chant only for the secondary benefits. A student of Vedanta may get a little bit added motivation. His main motivation is moksha. But in most ordinary students, householders, lay students, what we call as for Vedanta, there's always something, na? Arey Baba, I have to earn a living. I need to make some money. I need to see that my child is married, etc. The child is well educated. So that concern is always there. So Sureshwara puts this thing. I mean, it is there in the original Dakshinamurti Stotram by Shankara. And Sureshwara explains it just to give it a little added push to take care of those concerns. He says, don't worry. I know those concerns are there. Therefore, do it for moksha. As avantaram, all this will be taken care of. Don't worry about it. As a secondary thing, it will be taken care of. Yeah. So don't worry. It's nothing to be worried about. You don't have to spend all your time only in earning a living. You can take some time off, a couple of hours a week, and something like that. To do all this also, nothing is lost. Avantara phala. So it gives you an added push, that's all, nothing more than that. Because the concerns are there. Even for a sadhu, those concerns can be there. No? He doesn't know where the next meal is going to come from. Let us say he is a sadhu, but he has not yet understood the truth completely. He is living a life of sannyasa for nishtha. His concerns are there. अरे कल रोटी मिलेगा क्या नहीं पता है? नहीं पता है. लॉकडाउन है. Where will you get your next meal from? Can be. ठीक है, भगवान देख. But that's the thing about a sadhu. Yoga kshemam vahamiham. Ishvara has said that, na? And I am a bhakta of Ishvara anyway. He will take care of it. Name bhakta pranishyati. And it's taken care of also. That's exactly what he's saying. So that concern need not be an issue with you. That concern is easily addressed. So that relaxed mind, you can study Vedanta. Does that clarify the whole thing? Yeah. So good place to stop then. Om Tat Sat.